All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our weekly call for executives and business owners. As usual, this is Sharon Shaw speaking from Integrator Support, and I just wanted to today talk about investments. In general, it's life gives us opportunities that are based on sort of a risk-reward kind of environment. And last week, we had a wonderful speaker join us, Chris Peterson from Vector Firm. Chris has an extensive sales background and sales consulting, and he's able to look at the sales process kind of like a machine. You know, he's that guy who comes in and maintains the copier, who knows where the paper feeds in from, how it gets there, how it generates the images, and why the product turns out the way it does. And the truth is that sales is somewhat of a science. A sales process or a sales system is very much like a machine. And it requires regular maintenance. It requires that continued observation for optimal performance. And, you know, just like anything, parts need to be replaced and things need to be adjusted. So what Chris was talking about last week was sort of what he has done for some dealers of ours that are looking to make that transition to a more managed services-centric business model. And they're just kind of trying to figure out where to go and how to change and what particular features within their organization and on their machine need to be adjusted for that, you know, copier to work right. So what I wanted to do, this flyer that you're all looking at today is a brochure about the Vector Firm services. And Chris is actually working on some pretty creative programs that can make his offer very attractive in all aspects of your business. But in terms of what he talked about was that step one. So if you look at the top here, the column on the left is a diagnostic review. And, you know, as we've talked about, we don't charge for our marketing support, our sales support, our time, or anything. But as I was thinking about his conversation last week and just sort of in general, you know, what kind of company might need Chris? Or in general, who might need to invest in this effort? And that's at the bottom line, or the bottom line is that you're going to have to invest in this transition. And now, whether it's in Vector Firm or not, I don't have any slides today, just conversation. But in general, there's going to be at least 5 things that are going to require an investment from you guys. The first being, as we talked about extensively, commission for your people. To make people move and sell what you want them to sell, they have to have a reason. They have to have an incentive. It has to be better doing it that way than it was before. Some of you already have sort of an RMR commission structure in place that is working for you, and you've balanced out, you know, the value of the contracts that are being sold, whether they're maintenance or monitoring or otherwise, versus, you know, how much time and overhead you're actually investing in those contracts, and commission, of course, as well. Commission is one of those things that is tricky, right? And we've talked quite a bit about it. I think we had a call, one of our first or second calls, I think we talked a lot about commission this year. And the reason why I'm bringing that up right now is because, you know, Chris can really assist in aligning that commission structure with the goals, managing that risk, helping you identify people that are going to be, you know, good fits for that sales process and good fits for the organization, character-wise and all of that. But in general, you should expect to spend more on sales. Your cost of sales should be higher with RMR, just in general, because you're going to be banking on that back-end revenue, okay? That's just the way it works. Now, there are ways to manage that risk. You can wait to pay the commission until you've collected from the customer. You can handle project financing. That is a huge benefit in terms of paying commissions. I know we talked about financing before too, but having a whole year's worth of monitoring revenue up front before integrator support invoices you for that time allows you to cash flow that commission. Okay, so again, your investment is going to be apparent. You're going to feel it. You're going to have to invest in additional income for your people when they start generating this revenue. Another form of investment you're going to be making is time. You're all on this call today. You have been for the last 6 or 7 weeks, which is great. So obviously you're already starting to recognize that and realize that. It's your time spent doing this, learning. It's your time spent adjusting, managing, going back to that copy or sales machine and starting to figure out what needs to be fixed. And it's going to be a lot of follow-up. You have to take this leadership role and make sure that you're following up with your team about what they're working on, about whether or not there are opportunities in the pipeline that warrant an RMR kind of sale. Also, it's the other people's time in your organization. The amount of overhead you'll allocate to this will include people from your customer service team, whoever it is that takes phone calls and things like that, and understanding what to do if someone calls about these services. Your accounting team is going to have to start learning these new invoicing structures and how often are we going to invoice and exactly what are we invoicing for and what do we expect from integrator support in terms of what we owe them. It's an investment for them as well. And obviously, again, sales time. The sales folks now, typically they're not compensated per hour like the other folks that I just listed off. However, you know, it's sort of an opportunity cost, right? You're going to have to steer their time into selling RMR generating revenue or generating services instead of whatever else they would normally be selling or in addition to what they'd already be selling. But there's only so much, you know, water you can stick in that tank. So eventually some of that displacement is going to happen, and in order to fit all of the priorities in, things will have to shift. And some things that they were spending a lot of time on, maybe they won't spend as much time on. They have to make the time. So in general, what I'm getting at is that you're going to have some skin in the game as you move forward with this. So commission, time. Here's another one, margin. Okay. A lot of people wonder like how to handle margins. Another great thing about the project financing is some of that stuff becomes relatively invisible, I guess, to the customer in a way when you just quote a monthly payment. And if they're comparing it to a line item by line item kind of proposal from somebody else, you know, you're not going to be as exposed to being scrutinized for any kind of money you're trying to make on that deal. So financing does help allow you to complete your full margin and still quote an RMR service and generate the revenue you want. However, there are cases where your customers won't want the monthly financing, or they're going to want to really compare you. Maybe you're up against a competitor. Maybe ADP is quoting a job, or it's a different company that's trying to go after the same opportunity, and they have both a service and an installation, and you're up against their bid. I've seen a couple of those. I've seen a couple of the opportunities that were competitive in nature. And general rule that we've seen people succeed with the most is break even on the installation. Make that installation cost and the cost of the equipment as bare bones as you can. Now, if you're not in a situation, if you don't already have some RMR coming in, if you don't have the capital, we understand and totally understand that. But if you have the ability to reduce your margin on the product and on labor, that will put you in a more competitive position in your proposals to the clients where there's somebody else doing the same thing. That's just how the big guys are able to do it. They have the wherewithal. They have the money. They have the time. They are able to give away a little bit up front in order to reap the benefits on the back end. So that's another form of investment that you need to start considering. Sort of the last one that I wanted to talk about was something that I've seen work really well. One of our dealers, API, out of New England, had a webinar that we did for them a little while back, and they gave away an iPad to one attendee of that webinar. So they promoted it. They sent out an awesome invitation that looked like an iPad. So if you opened your mail, you got a postcard that's in the shape of an iPad, looks just like it. And in the text, it looks like in the, I don't know if you guys all have an Apple device or an iPad, but they have a notepad feature, or an app, I should say. And so they basically wrote out the invitation to the webinar and just had the basic information on the notepad picture of the iPad. So it's pretty cool. And, you know, so what, they invested about, I guess, what is that, $500 for an iPad in that price, okay? And they ended up getting 45 end users on the line for that call. So it worked. It worked. And they're selling stuff to a handful of those people that were on the webinar that day. And so it paid for itself already. So what I'm getting at is, you know, think creatively. You know, this is in a way like a new venture. And so you're going to need to use whatever creative ideas you have to make this work. So the reason I still have this Vector Firm brochure up is because I just really believe in what Chris is able to do. And I'll tell you that there were several dealers that kind of started this process a year or two ago, and they spent a lot of time, and they did a lot of the things that we're talking about right now in terms of, you know, making that investment and showing some level of commitment and, you know, putting together some sort of a training and commission structure and all that stuff for their salespeople, and all that time and all of that effort, and it didn't yield any results. You know, they just, for whatever reason, maybe there wasn't enough support from the partner they had in the first place, or maybe, you know, they just were having a really hard time getting the buy-in, or, you know, something with the way they designed that system wasn't working right. It just wasn't working. And so Chris is an expert at figuring out what works. He knows what works. So I think it's worth your consideration. And basically what he can do for you guys is really come in and take all the areas of investment that I just mentioned, your commission, your time, any kind of sales prizes, type incentive things to, you know, promote and market these programs that we'll support you with, and, you know, any kind of margin that you forego on the front end to generate that revenue on the back end. He can do the math and help you determine, you know, what is the right formula for you. If each of those factors is part of your machine, it's part of that copier, that's part of that sales machine, he can help you adjust each of them so that it produces the output that you're looking for. So, you know, think about that. Think about your investment and what you're willing to put into it. Later today with the sales team, we're going to be talking about a similar kind of topic, but for them it's more in terms of commitment from a sales standpoint. So you guys as the owners need to be invested. It needs to be visible. People need to be able to see that you are reallocating stuff, that you are putting in. Your chips are in. And once your team can recognize how serious you are about it, that helps again with getting everybody on the ship and moving things forward. As far as the sales team today, we're going to be talking about commitment and how that is reflected on them. What is their level of commitment? What is their obligation as an employee of your firm to commit to the sale of these services? And so we're going to be talking about things like consistency, creativity, and having a can-do attitude in general. So today's sales session is going to be kind of, I'm hoping, motivational and lift people up and get everybody excited and ready to go out and sell some stuff. But today what I want you guys to think about is, how can you be more invested? What can you do to demonstrate investment? It doesn't necessarily have to be money, but you are spending money. And so if you're going to be spending this money, you may as well make sure everybody knows it, everybody's serious about it, everybody can see it and feel it, and the expectation is clear. As far as Chris Peterson and the Vector firm is concerned, his fee for the diagnostic review is something right around, I think, $5,000. You save money by being a part of integrator support. You can save 5% on that, so that helps quite a bit. But the investment, I think, is well worth it. He'll also be able to work with you on an ongoing basis if you're interested in that. If you need somebody to take it, not just from a strategy and review and give me some advice that I can follow and a roadmap to guide me down the road, but to also have somebody there to work with your team on an ongoing basis and hold people accountable. Make sure that what advice he had for you actually works and adjust things and make things happen. It's basically like having an additional member of your sales management team at a fraction of the cost, and at the same time, I think almost a more extensive result, just because he is able to see things from a different perspective. He's an outsider looking in with all of his background and all of his knowledge about this area of the business as well. You know, it's just incredibly valuable to have him as an asset on your team. So I want you guys to think about how are you already invested and what areas do you need to invest more in. You know, we are invested. Okay, how is integrator support invested? Well, we're here doing this webinar with you. You know, we're spending the time, we're spending the money, we're putting together the marketing programs, and we're doing that all at our own cost. You know, the idea is, again, just to help you guys get into position to be successful. And so if you use that same strategy and you just try to do things for the right reason, and if we're focused ultimately on that end result, which is providing your clients with a more safe and secure environment, we'll get there. But you do need to have some commitment to this model. So if you have any questions about commission or you know, the process or anything like that as far as rolling these services out, you know, go ahead and start typing those in right now. In general, what I've been seeing people do with margins is they're, like I said, they're going as close to break even as they can on the equipment and the install, as close to break even as you can. And then as far as the services are concerned, they're going for somewhere between a 40 and, I don't know, 45% gross margin. Some services you can get more than that. Others not. You know, maybe you'll stick around 30, 35%, depending upon who you're selling to and what you're selling them. But for like the video monitoring stuff, we're seeing a lot of like 30 to 40%. And with managed access, that's where you can really reap the rewards. If you guys do your own management of the access control database, obviously your only cost is really going to be your overhead and whatever portion you pay for the hosting of those servers in the first place. So it really can help pay for some of that investment, pay you back. And I think the key is going to be calculating that break-even point. You know, when does that account that you invested in the first place start really making you money? Now, here's something to consider, though. And a lot of people fail to do this. A lot of people don't know to do this. When you start calculating your break-even point and you're saying, okay, I am going to, you know, sell, say, a $10,000 installation. I'm going to give it away at about $8,000. You know, I'm going to, you know, take some of that skin, put it in the game, and $8,000 is what I'm going to sell it for instead of 10. And for that $8,000 system, I'm going to be netting, you know, say $1,000 a month for virtual guarding. And my margin is say if it's 40% of that, it's $400 a month. How many months does it take to get that $400 profit per month to make up for the $2,000 I reduced my upfront sale by, so I start making money? Okay, that's a pretty easy formula. It doesn't take too long. Typically where you want to be for that formula is somewhere between 18 and 24 months. That's what we've seen the most often. Now, obviously, we accept contracts that are just 12 months. You might sell contracts that are just 12 months. But in our 3.5 years over at T4S, our first client was a 12-monther, and they're still on board. So I hope that you're able to do the same, and I expect if we're delivering services on that, your clients will be happy and satisfied and have no reason to leave. But always make sure you manage your risk, and that's why you want to go for the longer-term contracts. Now, in addition to that, you also want to calculate, this is the part that people miss, the value of the RMR generated. Don't just look at it in terms of cash. Now, cash obviously makes the world go round. And if you're too generous up front and you don't have the wherewithal to support it on the back end, obviously that's going to be a problem. So you need to use that cash formula so it works for you. You know, calculate the commission, all that investment, make sure you associate all of that in when you calculate your break-even point. But once you are done with that process and you kind of know what you can afford to invest in those areas, now it's time to start looking at what am I going to be earning? What is the value being added to my company for that? So that $1,000 a month contract, right? That $1,000 a month contract. Now, video monitoring is still kind of new, okay? So there haven't been a whole lot of transactions in terms of companies being bought and sold that associate video monitoring. West Tech Interactive, I think, was one of the first. And basically, the market makers are saying that these contracts are still going to be worth, they're estimating somewhere between 30 and 36 times RMR, which is kind of a mean. It's kind of an average if you compare it to Berg's business. Now, the difference is Berg has a lot higher margin, a lot higher margin, because you're only, your cost is, what, $5 a month for each intrusion panel. And then you have, you charge $20 a month to the client. So there's a lot more margin in the Berg business. However, the dollar amounts are a lot less. So that's kind of why they've been saying somewhere around 30 times. So if you say $1,000 a month times 30, that contract added $30,000 worth of value to your company. Okay, that doesn't include the cash benefit of the margin that you're going to be associating, with that break-even analysis that we talked about earlier. But it's really important when you start calculating the extra commission you're going to be paying out, the any kind of, prizes or creative thoughts. I have a dealer, David Stanzel, out of Nashville, Tennessee, who's hosting a seminar for K through 12 customers. Great organization, very nice guy. They're basically, bringing in an A&E guy who's going to be sort of the keynote, talking about systems integration and, stuff like that, just stuff that in general matters to these school guys. And I'm going to be doing the opener. So I'm going to get in front of their audience. Now, it's going to cost them time. It's going to cost them money. They're spending time and money on the promotion of this program, this seminar. They're spending, obviously there's going to be, breakfast or lunch, stuff like that that's going to be at the event itself. Now, I think they're hosting it at their own office, so there's no venue fee. But you get the idea. They're investing in that seminar, and it's going to generate revenue for them. They will sell something afterwards. But it's important that you guys, as you start really adding this up, I've seen a lot of people start saying, oh my gosh, this is starting to take so much out. It's been 4 or 5 months. We've only sold a couple jobs. I just don't know if I can keep this up, or I just don't know if it's worth it, or maybe I should go back to doing what's comfortable. It's really important you remind yourself of that 30 times RMR benefit going back to the company. The value of that contract will far outweigh a lot of those formulas that we just talked about. So just keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the prize. And remember that you're not doing this to put food on the table today. You're doing this for your retirement in the future, for generations in the future, for whenever you choose to sell your company. That's kind of what the goal is. Now, there are a lot of people, surprisingly enough, investors in our industry that will buy paper. They will buy or lend on these contracts. So if that's something that can help you, if that's something you want to use to fuel growth, you know, a lot of companies in the bird alarm business go out, they sell some contracts. Once they have a substantial amount of RMR, maybe $10,000 a month or so, they can start borrowing against that. And they can use that cash to continue to fund the effort to build it and build it and build it further. And then as they continue to build it, obviously the value of the company continues to increase, and either they sell it or they continue to borrow and continue to use that as like a credit line. And when they use it, it's just growing their net worth. So I just wanted to share with you guys investment. This is a real investment. I mean, this is like almost a new company that you're building here. And it's important that you nurture it, and it's important that you keep your focus not just on, you know, getting that poopy diaper wiped up for that baby. You're thinking about who are they going to be in the future? What kind of person will they be? Will they be healthy? Will they be smart? Will they be taken care of? Think about this like it's your baby, and it will work. So make sure your sales team come on in 30 minutes. Again, we're going to be talking about commitment from a sales standpoint. What does that mean? How can they demonstrate their level of commitment? How should they be going about their day to demonstrate, you know, that they understand these services, that they're out there, and their purpose is going to be similar to yours, and it will be worth it for them because they'll have a better commission, a better payout when they sell these services. So thank you all for your time today. As usual, it's been a pleasure. And please contact me if you have any interest at all in having Chris Peterson come out and see you guys. I mean, whether you're a big company that has a division, you know, that you're going to be, you know, dedicating to this, or if you're a smaller company that just needs some help and guidance on how can I operate in a manner that I can compete with some of those bigger companies. Chris has the expertise. He has the tools. He will come in and maintenance that sales machine that we talked about earlier and make sure everything is working right, so that way you're in a good position for a good output. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful Tuesday. Look forward to talking with you again here in 30 minutes or next week if you're not planning on being here for the sales call. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.